Good evening, everyone. Welcome to meeting 5 of the Northeast Area Elementary Boundary Study. I'm Chris Percato from the Office of Strategic Planning. A few housekeeping issues we want to go over. Number one, make sure everyone has signed in on our sign-in sheet up front so that we can have a meeting attendance. In the event of an emergency, our exits are to our left here and out into the parking lot. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, that's the direction we'll head. We'll evacuate that way and take attendance off our sign-in sheets out in the parking lot. Our restrooms are out to the back and to your left. Please don't proceed into any other areas of the building. Our BCPS-TV crew is here with us tonight. Remind everyone, if you'd like to make a comment, committee members, please raise your hand, and James or Matt will direct you to one of the 3 microphones around the room. And because we do want to make sure that we're capturing all our comments for our viewers at home. And please do not handle the microphones. Please leave the microphones in their stands. Our COVID protocols, our mitigation protocols are in effect tonight. We are in limited attendance with committee members and staff members only. All others are welcome to join us online. That link is available on the BCPS webpage, main webpage under main events. There's no food served this evening. There are water bottles up here up front if you get thirsty. All persons in the room will be masked at all times. If you need a mask break, please step outside for a moment. We'll attempt to maintain physical distancing of 6 feet at all times. We may compromise that for short periods of time in small group study. We've limited our shared materials. If you need extra pens and pencils, things like that, there's plenty available. There's hand sanitizer available at all tables. And finally, if you should find yourself throughout the course of this meetings in receipt of a positive COVID test or are in the vicinity of someone who has had a positive COVID test, please report to Mike Godfredson in our Office of Strategic Planning, and he will handle the appropriate communications. Thank you all and for joining us, and I'm turning it over to Mr. James Cooper with Cropper GIS.
Thank you, James. Again, thank you for coming out this evening. I hope everybody had a good holiday break. We've done a lot of work up till now, and we're getting towards the back end of this boundary study. And we have a few things to go over this evening. So our goals tonight are to review the survey results. We had the public information session on November the 3rd, and that was completed, and a survey was delivered to the public following that meeting. So we want to go over those results. Everybody should have the survey results handout in their packet that they received tonight. So as we get to those results and go over some of those statistics, maybe you can have those things at hand. We also have some updated information, some 2021 enrollment data to kind of inform us and give us a little bit of more information on why this boundary study is necessary. After going over the survey results, we will have you guys break into your small group sessions to go over the statistics in depth, converse on what you're seeing and what the public sentiment on these options are. Then we'll break into a discussion after you guys are done with your small group, a large group discussion on what you guys have found, certain trends that you're seeing. And then we'll adjourn. We won't keep you here any longer than necessary. So just giving a brief overview of where we're at. We're here at meeting 5. We have this meeting and one more meeting left in this boundary study process. We've done a lot of work. You guys have done a lot of work, reviewed a lot of information, and we're getting towards the tail end to get into a recommendation for the board that's supposed to occur on the 8th of 2022. Following that, some dates to look forward to in the future are the board hearing that's going to be occurring February 16th of 2022. And then after the hearing, the board decision is expected to occur on the March 8th of 2022. So we're getting to the back end and the last few meetings that we have here to deliberate boundary study options. So here's some new data that we have at hand. Throughout this boundary study process, we've been working with 2019 data, as we have found is a bit more reliable in terms of adequate enrollment, considering the pandemic that occurred in 2020. So here you'll see that the 2021 data is showing that there still is a need for capacity relief in the study area. While you look at the 2019 data, and you'll see that 7 out of the 8 schools in our study area are at 100% capacity utilization or more. And you'll see here that the 2021 data is reflecting that we're still getting about 6 of the 8 schools in the study area that are at 100% utilization or higher. So the study area still needs additional seats to try to give relief to all the schools involved. The options that have been developed, we see are supporting what we're seeing with the new enrollment in terms of providing relief to all these schools. We have not updated the estimated enrollment for the options using 2021 data. We only have a few meetings left, as I explained before, and the latest enrollment doesn't indicate that there's any issue with the options that we have in hand currently. So again, we're dealing with 7 participating schools, and we're going to add an additional school. The 2 project schools for this boundary study are, we're building a new Northeast Elementary School that is going to be built bordering the currently Fullerton Elementary School Zone and Elmwood Elementary School Zone. And then Red House Run Elementary School is getting additional buildings built onto it to increase capacity. So again, we want to stay mindful of the boundary study objective. This is a community-based comprehensive boundary study, and our goal is to reduce overcrowding in this study area. We want to create viable and successful boundaries to effectively utilize the new Northeast Elementary School that is being built, as well as the expanded Red House Run Elementary School. And then we also want to support the diversity among the schools that reflect the entire school system. So just dialing back, we had a public information session held on November the 3rd, and that was just to give the public a good overview of where we're at in this process, work that has been done to date. And then we also presented 2 options to the public at that time to get their sentiment on how they may feel about each option. And then we also had a survey that was posted for the public to participate in to answer pertinent questions pertaining to each option. That survey lasted from November the 3rd to the 17th, and we had very, very good feedback as 228 total respondents participated in the online survey. So we'll want you to stay mindful that the information that you see in your survey, in your handout, reflecting the survey results, you want to use that as an additional tool as you make decisions in this boundary study. You don't want to use it as the sole determination on what option you want to choose, but you want to add that to all the pertinent information that we've studied up till now. So now I'm going to go over a few results from the survey. Feel free to open up your packet to the handout to kind of review some of the tables that you see there, and kind of start gathering some of your thoughts on what you're seeing. So one of the questions that the survey geared towards the public was, what is your overall opinion towards an option? So you'll see here, option 1 had about 37% of the respondents vote either strongly in favor or somewhat in favor. So about 1/3 of the respondents favored option 1. On the other end of the spectrum, option 1 had about 24% of the respondents vote either somewhat opposed or strongly opposed. So about 1/4 of the respondents did not agree with the boundary lines for option 1. And another fact is about 39% of the respondents were neutral. So that was where a majority of the respondents didn't neither favor nor opposed a particular option. We're looking at option 2. We had similar results. Option 1 and option 2 had similar results in terms of favoritism and opposition towards it. You'll see option 2 at about 34% of the respondents vote either strongly in favor or somewhat in favor. And on the other end of the spectrum, about a quarter of the respondents voted somewhat opposed or strongly opposed. And majority of the respondents voted neutral in terms of option 2. So another question that the survey asked the public was, what are the primary reasons for supporting an option? You'll see a table there in your handout where where you'll see a column that says the reason for favoring an option, and then you'll also see the percentage and number of people who voted for a particular variable on why they favored an option. So the main trends that we see with both option 1 and option 2 is that many of the respondents favored both of those options for their ability to maintain neighborhood continuity, and then also because they addressed current overcrowding. On the other hand, the respondents were also asked what were their primary concerns for opposing an option. And the number one trend that we find between option 1 and 2 is that some respondents opposed them because they felt that it divided existing neighborhoods. So there's a few more tables that are within the public survey handout to give you a little bit more information. There were a few more questions that were asked during that time. But at this time, we're going to go ahead and review the 2 draft options that the public was responding to, and kind of get our minds back fresh on what those boundaries were and some of the advantages and limitations of each of those options. So we have option 1 here, and there are a few differences between option 1 and 2, but overall they're very similar, besides a couple areas that differ along the Vincent Farm area, and then also the Elmwood and Fullerton and New Northeast area differ a bit. But for option 1, some of the advantages that we found are Elmwood and McCormick Elementary School satellite areas no longer exist. That was one of our secondary and additional considerations that drove this boundary study. Capacity relief is provided to all schools within the study area, where we were able to get all schools under 100% utilization with these new potential boundary study lines. And all walkers are still in their current walk zone in this option. So we were able to preserve that aspect and not force any families to then be bused to school when they had the ability to walk. Some of the limitations with option 1, though, are that the 3-way feeder pattern split for Vincent Farms still exists. We weren't able to eliminate that completely, and it still exists in this option. Another limitation with this option is that the New Northeast Elementary School feeds into 3 middle schools as well. With expanding such a large, vast area to the northwest of this study area, it's expected that there was going to be some splits happening, but those splits are relatively balanced. On option 2, you'll see some of the same advantages and limitations. Elmwood and McCormick Elementary School satellite areas no longer exist in this option. We're able to eliminate those down in this area here. The capacity relief is provided to all schools within the study area. We were able to get the Red House Run Elementary School estimated utilization down to 90%, and the New Northeast Elementary School estimated to open up at 91%. So it gives a little bit of room for growth for these new schools and these new buildings that families tend to migrate to. This option also impacts the least amount of students among both options presented. Only estimated of 911 students are expected to be impacted. So that's definitely a positive when you're considering that you're building an entire new school in the area. And the limitations for option 2, very, very similar to option 1. The 3-way feeder pattern split for Vincent Farms still exists, although we were able to improve it slightly when it comes to balancing those percentages that feed into middle school. And then the New Northeast Elementary School feeder pattern also feeds into 3 middle schools in this option as well, but it's also balanced.
Hey, thanks,
James, I wanted to bring up one point, something that I had observed when we were looking through the survey data. If you go back to option 1, yes, so one of the things when I was looking through we were looking through the survey data, I saw that both options seemed to be similar in terms of opinions between both options and people who liked or opposed the different options. And so I was trying to find things where there were differences between option 1 and 2 from communities. One of the things that I noticed that I felt was notable to bring up to your attention was that group that's in that purple right there that's in Fullerton. It's this area right here that is currently in Fullerton. In option 1, they're going to Elmwood. And in option 2, if you go to option 2, you can see that area is in the new Northeast area school. I was looking at the data and I saw, well, Fullerton area, more people from the Fullerton area opposed option 1, and where in option 2 they did not oppose it. And I was like, why was that? Why was it different between the Fullerton opinion between option 1 and 2? And this was the area that has a good number of students in it that caught my eye as a key difference between 1 and 2. My deduction is that it was because of that is why that people in that community probably prefer to go to the new school as opposed to an existing school, which option 1 sends them to Elmwood. But that's just the one thing I wanted to note.
No, it's definitely a good point. All right, so without further ado, we'll have you guys break into your small groups. Option 1 and 2 have not been modified from the public information session. Get together, converse, start to review the survey results and the materials provided up to date, kind of see and talk about certain trends that you may see via the survey results, and then also kind of go through and rethink about some of the pros and cons of each option. The principals will act as facilitators and recorders. We have up to 40 minutes to reconvene. If we see that the groups finish within that time, we'll stop then and get moving forward with the presentation to not keep you guys here any longer. Any questions? Awesome. We'll reconvene here soon. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to regroup as a whole here. I've hearing lots of good conversations around the maps as you guys continue to look at them. It's really good stuff. What we'd like to do is just get a feel for the conversations that each group was having, and see. Didn't see a whole lot of markups. I think you guys. I'm getting a feeling you're getting to a point where there's not a whole lot of other further edits being drawn on the maps or considered, but I'd like to hear what conversations, we would like to hear what conversations each group has, and then we'll figure out what to do as a whole committee after that. Who wants to go first? Do you guys, does this group want to, who wants to speak? Maybe just give us a summary of some of the conversations that you were having. If there are any changes that you're considering. Does anybody want to step up? Okay, yes ma'am.
So what our group decided to do was to look at some of the comments that were made from previous boundary study committees and compare what individuals questioned. And as we were looking at both options, one of the things that we notated was just the fact that option 2 provides, again, the most diversity and for each school's option or each school's layout in terms of ELL again, as well as we know some communities may be bothered by some separation, but looking at long-term projections, it also keeps every school in the area under that 100% cap, which is, again, the goal to provide relief. Factoring in Red House Run again, knowing that in the future, they're gonna have more capacity for seats. So we looked at that also. So we just, again, feel that option 2 is just the best option. Bus routes also weren't an option for some. Keeping those walkers in their zones was important. We know transportation is going to have their hands full with creating new routes already for the new Northeast area school. And for specifically option 2, one of the things we looked at was the Slater Avenue and how it would be very difficult if we decided to move those students. I think it was from the new Northeast area school to, was it Joppa View? The bus wouldn't be able to actually turn down that road. So then that's another issue, just how buses have to maneuver and get students in and out of communities safely. I know for our school, sometimes we have community members that actually call and complain about the buses and how the bus drivers seem to be having issues with navigating in a community. So we were looking at what's the safest option for the students also on those buses and the drivers as they're driving those students to get to the schools safe and sound. Did I miss anything? I think you did great. Okay, that was our group. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. What about, who wants to go next? I guess you guys are closest to this mic over here. Does somebody want to just give us a synopsis of some of the conversations? Was there anything that, any aha moments or any, anything that you guys discussed that's notable? Okay, just more of a review of the materials again, and looking at the data and information. Okay, yeah, there's a mic right there, actually, closer to you.
We just talked about where Fullerton was being cut versus the families that would go to Elmwood in one option and the new Northeast in the other. And also, like the Blue Group, we looked at capacity numbers and what schools would be opening at capacity, how much flexibility there was. I think Vincent Farm in option 1 had close to 80 seats, and in option 2 it only had 25 potential growth. So just kind of weighing the options with the new Northeast and Red House Run opening closer to 90 and 91 in option 2. That's all we really talked about,
Sure.
Capacity numbers.
Okay. Anybody else from this group want to make any comments or anything like that based off of some of the things you've looked at? Okay, what about the group in the back? Does somebody want to give us a summary of some of the discussions that they had?
So I guess the bit of an aha moment that we had was that we noticed that the section PB 203. It's just going to be it is kind of bad optics. We understand how it fits numbers-wise, but optic-wise, that group is an apartment complex, and it gets to stay at Elmwood. I mean, it stays at Elmwood, even though it sees the new school, whereas the surrounding areas that also went to Elmwood were single-family homes, and they get to go to the new school, and how just generally where it fits numbers-wise, it doesn't really look good from a, perspective. We understand how it fits numbers-wise, and because otherwise, if you move them into the northeast with the new housing complex coming in, that endangers that school from being over full, but it doesn't look good from just perspective. I think that's pretty much it. Everything else was just reviewing everything else that we seen before.
And with that, there's always pros and cons with any option as you kind of look at configuring the zones for them. One of the things we do know is that we have the empirical data to tell us what the impact will be on utilization and demographics and things like that of the schools. And so that helps guide us as well. Although it's a notable comment that there's an area that's closer that's not going there than other areas that may be. So it's a notable comment. And if that area were to go to the new school, it would probably bring that new school over or at or over 100%. Is that what you were looking at? 61 students. It puts it at or nearly over capacity. Does anybody else have any other comments from the back table, or any other feedback that they'd like to provide? So the issue that you brought up exists in both options, though, isn't that right? It does.
Yes, it exists in both options, but from my understanding also, however, in option 2, there are additional single-family homes that are coming from Fullerton that kind of would go in the same direction, as it were, so it doesn't look quite as bad, even though they weren't initially going to Elmwood.
Mm-hmm. That's the area that I just brought up that was different between the feedback from the Fullerton community.
Yes.
In that area had preferred the new school versus Elmwood.
Yes, that's
okay. Does anybody else have any other comments about that or anything? I was just looking at the new. So the new school in both 1 and 2 have 54 available seats. So if you look at the 60 getting added to it, that would take it over 100. I think that's probably the concern with keeping that or having that go or to the new school, is that you would have that new school opening at or over 100, which is a challenge for the school. But any other feedback? Anybody? We've had all 3 tables talk about just a recap on some of their conversations. Anybody want to bring anything else up? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that our table also looked at that PB 203, and we definitely said that they are close in proximity, and that probably was the comment that we all read, that was a parent that seemed to be disappointed that they were only a mile away from the new school and not going there. So we tried to look at ways that we could maybe shuffle things, switch things around, maybe take care of that PB 506 that people were upset about, but you really can't, because then Joppa View, which was already very close to capacity, would be well over if you start shuffling things around. So I think with the give and take that you have to make in these situations, it's a little bit unfortunate that one little area is disappointed, but one area versus a handful of areas, you have to take that into consideration, is kind of what we said in the end when we were looking at trying to alleviate that same concern.
Sure, yeah. Any other comments that committee members want to make about the survey results or the two options that we're at here? Well, oh yes, sorry, I didn't see you.
I just want to say that I did read the email that we got with the whole survey results and all the comments. And I mean, I also want to take the input of the public really seriously, but there were also some comments where one comment said in particular, I wonder why they're not taking the new school into account. And I went, oh my goodness. So you just want to always take those with a grain of salt, knowing that we're putting in the hard work of really studying it really carefully, detail by detail. I mean, we're talking about tiny planning blocks of 4 children at a time, and I just want to just remind us that we're looking really detailed, and the public is not in with us every single time.
Yes, absolutely. You guys have the benefit of looking at this data, over the course of the study in a lot more detail, and that's why we say that the public input is good to look at and see is there anything that would bring us closer to adhering to our objectives, but use it just as a guide or as an additional piece of information with everything else, and not just make it the sole determinant on what you think is best, because it's just another piece of information. So when we do these studies, we built a process that has 2 more meetings, this one and the next one. And normally at this point we would see, if we did see a lot of markups on maps, maybe edits to maps based off of information that's been provided by the public, or as you guys continue to look at the maps, we would certainly be gung-ho and going to the next meeting. But where we're at now, we see that the 2 options are being evaluated and studied, but there's not a whole lot of movement going on with the options. So we wanted to give you guys the opportunity, if you feel ready, to vote tonight on a recommendation, because we don't want to keep you here or at meetings any longer than we have to, and be honorable of all your time, but we want to give you as much time as you need to make your decision. So one of the things that we would like to do is we have the clickers in front of everybody, and we're just going to take a vote first off to see, do we want to vote tonight? So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you, do you want to vote on a recommendation tonight? And if we have a unanimous group saying yes, we're ready to vote, then we will proceed with a vote tonight on a recommendation. If it's not unanimous and we have some people that feel like they need a little more time just to finalize thoughts, then we will have that next meeting on the 15th in a couple of weeks. And it's no problem if we have to, either way, but we want to give you the opportunity, to field out the committee. If you guys are ready to vote, then we will proceed with the vote tonight. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so we have the clickers. Is that right, Mike? Okay. We'll go ahead and turn on the live action voting protocol here. See what we're having. And yeah, sure. You want to ask? Yeah, sure thing. While we're working through a little transition here.
So I'm just trying to get clarification because I'm still confused. It is my understanding that the new Northeast Elementary School is slated to open next year, the beginning of the fall, and Red House Run is not slated to open into the following year. So how do both of these options work with that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So this is a phased-in process. So the committee is focused on what will the boundaries look like once both of these projects are online. So after Red House Run is online, you guys are really working towards that end game. What is it when both schools are online? What will the zones look like? There will be an interim phase of movement where not all of these students will be moved next year, but there could be, what the district is going to do is work through implementation of your recommendation and try to figure out how can we move as many students as possible when the new school opens up, and then not move students again when the Red House Run opens up. So try to move as many students as possible with only moving them once, and then when that new Red House Run comes online, then you'll move the final phase of your plan. So we...
So if I'm Fullerton, and it's option 2, and my kids just go to the new Northeast, and some stay at Fullerton, then that's an easy thing. But if I'm Fullerton, and it's option 1, Elmwood and the new school, my kids who go to the new school would go next year, but my kids that go to Elmwood would stay until Elmwood kids go to Red House Run?
There could be an incremental shift like that. Yes, ma'am. So like Fullerton, when the new school opens up, we're going to be populating the new school as much as we can. Without the whole focus on this is to make the movements, but only move a household or a family once. So we don't want to move them next year, and then when Red House Run opens up, we move them again.
So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So my question is, if I have kids who are moving to Elmwood, let's just say, and they need the new Red House Run to open, is it possible that some kids, depending on the pocket or their neighborhood or their zone, would still move to Elmwood if it didn't put Elmwood over capacity, but some kids in another neighborhood also slated to go to Elmwood would stay another year until Elmwood had more space?
Yes, it's
Oh, my
possible.
goodness.
It is possible that it is. You know, the movement that you're seeing from. Yes, like the movement that you're seeing from school to school, even and not only the new school, but even movement within existing schools. As many as possible as you can, as soon as we can, to give that relief, but not move them twice. That's the key, yes. Okay, any other, that's a great question. I'm glad that, you asked that to make sure that everyone's clear on that. Is there any other comments or questions that you guys have about that or anything else? So what we have here is we've got our clickers, and people are already voting, so the question is, I feel comfortable making a recommendation to the Board of Education. So this is not voting on one option or the other. What we're asking you, if you are ready to vote tonight, click yes. And if you are not ready to vote tonight, you think you need another committee meeting to finalize it, click no. B is no. Okay, so we have the votes have been cast. Okay, so we do have, was it one vote? Okay, so we have one vote that has indicated that they need another, a little more time. And the remainders have said that they're ready to vote tonight. So we will go to the next meeting on December 15th, just to make sure that everybody is prepared and ready for our vote on the 15th, okay? We want to make sure it's unanimous. We don't want to cut this process short unless everybody's on the same page. I don't... Well, I did say... Huh? You want to vote, another vote? Okay, well, we'll do this one more time, but again, I don't want to push anybody too soon, okay? One more time, if you feel like you're ready to make a vote tonight, click yes or A.
Can I ask another question? What would happen differently? Right, if someone is voting for another meeting, I certainly want them to have that option. But what would we be doing at that next meeting for moving forward? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm all for having a meeting if someone wants them, but I need to understand the process of what that meeting looks like and how it would look different than this evening for bringing another option forward or doing something.
Well, let's, Yeah, so, yes, I mean, we could, do we want to see the results of this before, is it the? So, okay, okay. Now, okay, now I get, okay, we do have the second round, we have 100%, but is there something, and I don't want to call out the one person who did this, who voted no, but I do want to know, and I think the committee would like to know, what do you feel, and to add to the comment of the committee member, what do you feel is kind of holding you back? What concerns may you have about the options that may lead to another meeting to further explore? Is there anybody? If you could do the mic, you want to talk the mic? You know the microphone? Okay. 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 If you could do the mic, if we're going to have a conversation, we got to have it at the microphones, guys.
My whole thing is, as leaders, you never leave anything on the table. Like, you have to be willing to have a courageous, open conversation and say what you're thinking and what you want for what is best for students. So if you have something to say, please just say it.
There's a comment over here from a committee member.
I guess to what was said about the phasing in, is there a way to, I guess, show us how that affects each one?
The phasing depends on which option is the recommendation. And the options do look, and for a lot of the area, they're very similar. And so, to be honest with you, we haven't gotten into depth on the phasing component of this. So I know that we wouldn't be able to show you, like, we don't have something in the back of our lap looking at an answer for this yet. But we have done this for many districts in that the phasing component. And every time we're able to do it in an efficient way. I would think that with the new school opening first, you're going to have, most of the movement is probably going to occur at that initial time, but I don't want to make any assumptions in that, we really need both these schools online in order to get to the full implementation of your plan. But, so I guess the answer, that's a long-winded answer, but we don't have an answer right now on how that implementation will occur.
Okay. Would it be possible to hear from maybe the principals of the schools so that maybe they have some insight? Because
can I help you for a second? So I know for a fact that is the plan and that's what's happening, but it's not up to the principals to kind of say what the plan is. We don't really have that decision. However, the board will share how the phasing in of, and it's more so probably affecting when Red House Run opens up. That's going to come out from the board, and they'll come up with the idea of how that will look. It's not the first time that we've been in a predicament like this. And so with other schools who have been through this, they'll probably model it after that as that's happening. As far as the new school, when we open up next year, all of those students who are assigned to the new school, we will take every baby that is assigned to that school, and we're going to be happy and excited about it so that we can open up. And then when Red House Run comes, those students who may not have moved, the board will come up. We'll get directive from someone to kind of go through that. But it's not really, it's going to be kind of, it is what it is, and then we'll just move into that phase like that.
Okay, thank you. But I was really just asking, like, could the principals come up to just give insight onto what are the pros and cons of each one that they may see that we may not know about because we don't go to that school or we are not in that area. They may have something, I mean, if they want to, if they don't have anything, that's fine, but that may help just clear the air for any other questions.
So you're asking if any principals have any comments about how they feel about
Either option.
either option. Is there any either option? Is one a deal breaker? Things like that in terms of principals' opinions.
Honestly, I'm sorry. As a principal, I don't think that we are allowed to, and that's why I'm saying either option is fine. It's going to give me all the babies. We're going to provide every support. I can tell you that I've worked with my colleagues and that whatever school they end up in, they're going to be perfectly fine because we're going to love on them babies. We're going to support them babies. So whichever option it is, it's good.
Yeah. The principals are very resourceful and they're very very good, and you know they can handle anything that they're given. And so you know these options are, if you look at these options and size them up against the objectives and the criteria, both of these options are doing a very good job in providing that relief. So it's not an easy choice for you, but you know they both have done a good job in as you've evolved through the last two options in adhering to the objectives and criteria as best as they can when you compare them to some of the other options that you have considered over the course of the study. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're comparing option 1 versus option 2 and the changes for those students that are moving into Red House Run, because I know that's kind of one of those things that, you know, they're worried about the transition and making sure that they're not being moved more than once and how it's getting phased out. If you compare the two that are actually, as far as like the numbers that are moving into Red House Run, the difference comes into option 1. There's an additional 39 coming from Shady Spring to Red House Run that you don't get in option 2. Which goes back to the point that fewer students are being affected in option 2. Not saying that I prefer option 2, not by any means. I'm just stating that if that's a concern, option 1 doesn't move those additional students, and we don't have to worry about those students having to be shuffled an additional time. And if it were to happen, or if it doesn't seem like it would happen, you guys seem to have a pretty good hold on it. It is 39 students, not to discount those 39, but it's not a lot of students making that transition between option 1 and option 2.
You've used these before, haven't you? Okay. Okay, so it's a good discussion that you guys are having, talking about, you know, all of this. It's important, and I think that we're at a point with the group. The group is at a point to make a vote tonight on option 1 or option 2, based off of the votes, the feedback you had. Yes, ma'am. Did you want to make another comment?
when we vote, does it have to be unanimous or is it majority wins?
No, the vote will be majority.
Okay.
The majority will be the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. But, you know, depending on the results, we will share with the board, not depending on the results, we will share the results with the board and how the votes panned out, and so that they can understand if it's a close or if it's a big, wide margin. Mr. Taylor, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it really clear, since there was a lot of conversation about the phasing. The phasing is going to take place, the plan for how it's going to be phased will be done after a final decision is made, ultimately by the board. You make a recommendation, that goes to the board, and then they decide what the boundaries are going to be. They actually have the right to say, no, this is not what we want something different. And that's up to the board. Then, when we have a final approval by the board, we have all these different principles that we apply, protocols that we apply to the way in which we decide how the phasing is going to work. One of them is we don't move students twice, just move them once. Another one is we want to move them as soon as possible once seats are available. Another is we don't move them when seats aren't available. So it's really a numbers game that we look at the map, we look at the students, and then we identify which ones are going to move when. So all I can tell you is that we have to apply those criteria to the phasing, and we won't know until after the board approves it. But whatever the phasing is, it's going to follow those principles.
I don't know if I'm doing my math right, but I also don't think it's that many students. So it looks like if it's option one, it's if some of Fullerton's students do go to Elmwood in option one, you're talking 52 students that possibly couldn't move right away into Elmwood until Elmwood, some of the students moved into Red House Run. And if you look at option two, it looks like it's 36 students at Shady Spring who couldn't move into the following year. And back to the whole point of this, the reason of doing this is to eliminate overcrowding, right? Fullerton's been overcrowded by 250 students, so 50 students staying for another year, if that's what's needed, you know, from option one, is we're still reaching our goal of trying to eliminate overcrowding in the entire Northeast area with both options. And certainly some of those 52 or 36 could move, potentially, because you also never know how many rising fifth graders are going to stay, or, you know, families who choose to stay, or the whole special permission process that goes into it, so.
Yeah, that's a good point, that in either phasing, some students are not going to move until the new school is available. But keep in mind, and I should have said this first, what you're coming up with is a long-term plan. So having a phasing that moves some students but not others at a different time, we don't want that to be the deciding factor of which option you pick. We want to pick an option that will last for the long term, that makes sense for the long term. So I'm hoping that if you still want to discuss which option you want and other issues, that's fine. If the vote holds, then it's time to vote on the options.
So we're gonna look at doing a vote here, but I'm gonna give. Just want to make sure before I close the floor and we do a voting. Is there anybody else that wants to make any final comments before we vote? Anything that you want to say about the options or anything else? Any other comments or questions from the committee before we open the floor for a vote on the recommendation? Okay, so I think we're ready to vote. Everybody has their. Oh,
Before we vote, let's just get the record straight in terms of our number of devices and our number of participants. Mike, how many devices do you have active? 18, right. So we have a total committee potential of 34 members, and 26 total members of the committee are present tonight. We have out of 25 potential voting members, we have 18 present tonight. None of them are principals. Am I correct, principals? None of you have a voting device. Principals do not vote on the recommendation. Raise your hands. Show your hands, please. Okay, very good. So we have 18 voting members participating in the vote.
Yes. So, okay, so the record is straight here, I think. So what we're going to do now is vote on a recommendation, committee members. If you want option 1, click A. And if you choose to recommend option 2, click B on your clicker. We may have a dead clicker. You need a new one? Get you a new clicker? This one's not working? 52. Okay, 32. Here you go. He's going to get you activated here. 32, it's, where is 32? There it is. That's device 32. Okay, there you go. Okay, you're good. So, option 1 is A, option 2 is B on the recommendation. And I think we have one still out there. Has everybody cast their vote? Has anybody not cast their vote yet? Okay, I think we're good to go. Okay, well, let's see what the recommendation is. Okay, so 72% of you voted for option B, 27.8% voted for option A. So option B is going to be the recommendation that we bring forward to the committee, or to the board, for their consideration. And we will tell them, bring both of these options forward to the board so they can see the evolution of the process and how you got to the final vote. But there you have it. 72% is the option B is going to be the recommendation. So if you could just pull back up we got one more, just a couple of closing slides. And so let's go to the final steps here. So our next steps, we won't be meeting on December 15th now, since the committee has voted. So there's no need for that 6th meeting on the 15th. You can do a little extra Christmas shopping or whatever you need to do on that date. But we will be back to recommend to the board on February the 8th. Committee members, you don't have to be there. We ask you to be at all these committee meetings, and we really appreciate all your time. We do ask if you guys want to come to support the recommendation or be there to hear the board's deliberation and talks. You're more than welcome to come to the recommendation on February the 8th. That's going to be at the Greenwood Building at the mansion down at the bottom of the hill, and at 6:30 p.m. And then, as James mentioned, the board, once the recommendation is provided to the committee, to the board will open a hearing, and they'll invite the public to come give them their thoughts on the recommendation before they cast a vote. That's happening February 16th at Eastern Technical High School at 6:30, and then the board will be making their vote on March 8th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. So, but I speak on behalf of the district and also James and our staff, and thank you guys so much for all the time and hard work you guys have put in this process. We couldn't have done it without you. You guys really drove this, and we really appreciate your time and efforts. And we hope you guys have a happy holiday and everything, and have a good night. Thanks again.